All right, we're going to look at polynomial equations and equations in quadratic form. In this equation, I do not have a quadratic because there's an x cubed term and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 terms, so I can't use the quadratic formula. What I'm going to try instead is to factor by grouping. Okay, let's see here. If I took and separated it into two groups, and then I can factor out a 4x squared from that first term, so I'm left with 2x plus 1. And then from the second group, I'm going to factor out a 25, and I would get 2x plus 1 equals 0. So factor by grouping. All right, and so then if I factor out the 2x plus 1, what I'm left with is 4x squared minus 25. Minus 25, and that's still all equal to 0. So now I can use the zero product property, and that allows me to take 2x plus 1 and set that equal to 0, and 4x squared minus 25 and set that equal to 0. And now just solving this little equation, I get 2x is equal to negative 1 and x equals negative 1/2. Okay, great. And so now I can solve this one where I have 4x squared is equal to 25 dividing by 4. I get x squared equals 25 fourths, and then I can take the square root of both sides. And so I get x is equal to positive over negative 5 halves. And that would give me the solution set of negative 1/2 and positive negative 5 halves. And we are done. Excellent. All right, in this one I have a cubic, and it's a difference of cubics, so I need to use that difference of cubics formula. All right, and if I think of a as 2x and b as 1, then I would factor this as 2x minus 1, and then times 4x squared plus, 2x, and then plus 1, and that's equal to 0. And now we can use the zero product property, and so we get 2x minus 1 is equal to 0, giving us that x equals 1/2. And on this one, we would get 4x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 0, and I'm going to use the quadratic formula to solve that. All right, so I would get x is equal to the opposite of b, which is negative 2, and then plus or minus the square root of b squared, no, that's a positive 2 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 4, times c, which is 1, and that's all over 2 times a, which is 4. And then that simplifies to negative 2, plus or minus the square root of 4 minus 16, all over 8, and so then I would get x equals negative 2/8 plus or minus the square root of negative 12 all over 8. And that negative 12, I could factor that as negative 1 times 4 times 3, so that would simplify as 2i times square root of 3. All right. So then we can simplify this just a little bit more, and we would get x equals negative 1/4 plus or minus, well, let's see, it would be 2i over root 3 over 8, so then that would simplify because my 2 and my 8 could simplify, so it would be I times root 3 over 4, and that is done. So the solution set on this one would be that x equals the list of numbers 1/2, and then negative 1/4 plus or minus I root 3 all over 4. You could combine those into just a single fraction. It might be a little bit easier if you have an online program that you're trying to type that into. Okay, so there's our solution set. All right, on this one, I have an x to the 4th. So let's see how we can try and figure out how to solve this. If I think of this as if I let some new variable u be equal to x squared, then I could rewrite this as negative 3 minus 4. And let's think about that x to the fourth. X to the fourth, well, that is x squared squared, right? So then if u is x squared, then x to the fourth is actually, this would be the same as u squared. So I can replace that with u squared. And now this is a quadratic, and I can try and factor. And this actually does factor. U minus 4u plus 1 is equal to 0. And then I can use the zero product property, and I get that u is equal to 4, or u is equal to negative 1. And now I'm ready to substitute this back into my equation. All right, so then I would get, I'm replacing u with x squared, and that's equal to 4. And then this u I'm going to replace with x squared, and that's equal to negative 1. Okay, and now I can just take the square root of both sides. So I've got x is equal to positive or negative square root of 4. So x equals a positive or negative 2. Great. And then on this one, taking the square root of both sides, I would take positive and negative square root. So I would get x equals positive or negative I. And there's my solution. Done and done. Okay, so the big idea here is if you can use some substitution, do that. Rewrite your equation so that it's in a quadratic equation, and then you can just factor if you can, or use quadratic formula and go through and solve. And then you're going to substitute those values back in and then get your final solution of what x is equal to.